To believe in the word that comes from God is already much, but to rise toward it, taking its precepts as the very essence of one's own being, is much more. And when, through that faith, one perceives the things of God with the same clarity with which the eyes of the body perceive the things of the world, the Messiah is telling us that the beginning of faith starts when we truly believe that all the teachings he presents to us coming in divine clouds from the Father are the Word of God. This attitude that draws us closer to true faith is already a step that is very great. What he confirms to us is that we learn a principle of faith by believing that it is the Word of God. However, in the video Faith 03, Messiah, he already told us that true faith is never separated from reason. Therefore, when we hear the words written by historians of human religions regarding faith where they tell us that faith is believing in what was not seen, they affirm that God's faith only requires believing without seeing. But if the Messiah tells us that faith is never separated from reason, it is because when religious ministers make personal interpretations, they add to and subtract from God's words. In this way, the divine purity of the message becomes covered with shadows of human ideas that darken the truth that originally came from the Father. The insistence of the Messiah in telling us that true faith is never separated from reason is because his greatest desire is not only that we believe his teachings come from God, but that we apply our divine faculty of reasoning to them. And when we feel the goodness of God within these words, we receive in our soul the guidance that comes from the universal religion, the religion of God, the religion of love, feeling the light of truth as we receive the knowledge that God sends us. In ancient times, when it was taught that faith is believing without seeing, all religious teaching was not to be reasoned. All rational thinking was forbidden. One had to believe exactly as ministers explained, and if someone questioned their explanations by reasoning, it became cause for punishment in the name of God. This means that when we now pay attention to the teachings the Messiah presents to humanity on earth, we have taken a great step in the formation of our true faith. By feeling the spiritual value of his guidance, we know this word comes from God, that the Messiah has brought it to us from the Father. This admitting, this believing, gives us the beginning of true faith. It places us on the path of genuine faith. What remains is to assimilate the gradations of light and truth contained in the essence of these teachings. And we already know they are assimilated by repeatedly studying them while reasoning about what he explains to us. Since the Messiah knows perfectly that God communicates through his soul, he has no prejudice against our reasoning. He knows that by reasoning, we will receive the love of God in our spiritual consciousness, which will give us light and truth. This is the opposite of past teachings that are called the Word of God, but when reasoned, reveal human intentions. Religious historians seeking to control humanity for their own material benefit. And when he says, but to rise toward it, taking its precepts as the very essence of one's own being, is much more, we can feel the power of his word. By saying taking its precepts as the very essence of one's own being, he is telling us that in order to take these precepts of God's love into our lives, we must first love God within these words. An example is, we are equal by virtue of our origin, taught in the video Universal Religion 08, Messiah. This teaching makes us vibrate with love for God as we feel that we all come from the same divine source of the Father. Just like the Messiah, our origin is divine. We feel ourselves as children of God. Understanding this precept elevates our true faith, and this feeling in the love of the Creator is much more than merely believing. Because only believing, accepting without feeling can make us think we already have faith. Now we understand how human religions have stalled the spiritual elevation of their followers, causing them to repeat incarnations until they finally reason. Now we know that true faith is formed when I feel in my soul the knowledge that comes from God. And the Messiah adds, and when through that faith one perceives the things of God with the same clarity as the eyes of the body perceive the things of the world. He is telling us that as we assimilate the essence of each of his teachings, they must help us clearly understand the events of our lives while we live in this world. The precept "we are equal by virtue of our origin" allows us to feel that we are equal in God, in his divine essence, which is our soul. It helps us see that all members of our families came from God as spiritual beings, all members of society came from God as spiritual beings. What differentiates us is the true faith each person has in God. Every faith that is not reasoned is a faith outside the truth, covered with human concepts, not spiritual ones, because it was accepted without assimilating, without reasoning its essence. Yet they are still our brothers and sisters, they simply lack true faith. We have the duty to manifest through our actions the love we receive from God in our true faith, to serve as an example of how faith in loving God is expressed. If we are asked, we explain our faith using the words of the Messiah. But above all, we must love them as what they are, our neighbors, our brothers in God, without trying to change them. As we gradually assimilate true faith, the essence of God that we feel within it assures us that we will receive from God his love, his justice, his order, his balance, and all the harmony we need to continue our elevation toward greater eternal truths that the Messiah will teach us. Without speaking about ourselves, only loving what surrounds us, which are the things of God.